Hey boys and girls, we're back for part 2 of our Bible story about Saul. Now the last time we were together, we learned that Ananias found Saul and did exactly what God told him to do. He laid hands on him, and the Bible tells us that something like scales fell from Saul's eyes and he could see again. And that immediately he was baptized. So let's go back to Acts chapter 9. We're still there, and we read that Saul stayed in the city of Damascus for a few days, and he was so brave he began to preach that Jesus is God's son. Well, this made the Jewish leaders there very angry. Who is this man? Didn't he come here to arrest the Christians here, to throw them in prison? And now he's preaching and teaching the same thing that they believe. Oh, they were so angry. They wanted to get rid of him, and they began to plot and make a plan to do just that. Now, fortunately, Saul found out about their plan, and he knew that they would be watching the city gates day and night for him to leave so that they could capture him and get rid of him. So Saul and his followers, they had to come up with a plan too. They took him to the wall there in Damascus, and someone knew that there was a hole in the wall. And the Bible tells us that Saul got in a basket, and they lowered him down the wall all the way to the ground. And he was able to climb out that night and escape. And he made his way to Jerusalem. And when he got there, he couldn't wait to join the disciples because, he was a believer now. But there were no cell phones back then, and so the disciples hadn't heard all the good news yet. And they thought, is he trying to trick us and throw us in prison too? So they were very suspicious. Well, along came Barnabas, and Barnabas took Saul to the disciples, and he told them all of the amazing things that happened, how Jesus had appeared to Saul on the road to Damascus in that bright light, and that now Saul believed and he was baptized, and he had been preaching already that Jesus is God's son. And so he helped change their minds, and they said, okay, we believe you. So Saul stayed there in Jerusalem, and he began to do the same thing there. He began to preach that Jesus is God's son. Well, it didn't take long for the Jewish leaders there to get upset and angry, and they wanted to get rid of Saul too, because they knew him and they were very upset with him. When the disciples heard this, they said, you know what? It's better if you leave Jerusalem for a while. And so they helped him to leave and go to his home in Tarsus. So let's turn a few pages over in the Bible to Acts chapter 13. Now this is a very important chapter because we pick back up with Barnabas and Saul as they're preparing to go on their first missionary journey. Now it's here that we learn that Saul has 2 names, and that was a pretty common thing back then. Saul is his Jewish name or Hebrew name, and now we're going to learn that his other name is Paul. Paul is Greek, and he probably began to use Paul more because he and Barnabas were about to travel all over the Roman Empire, and they would be more familiar with the name Paul. So from now on, we're going to refer to him as Paul. Now, another special thing happened as he began to travel on these journeys all over the world, telling as many people as he could about Jesus. He met a lot of Christians, and he started to write letters to them to encourage them and help them to grow as Christians. And something is very special about those letters. Many of them are in our Bible today in the New Testament, and we can read those same letters that Paul wrote so long ago to the early church and to the Christians who were beginning to grow in numbers and spread all over the world. And Paul was a very important person that helped that happen. He was one of the very first missionaries, he and Barnabas. And so it's a great story. Now, Paul's adventures are really just about to begin. So let's think about this summer as a growing time, not just for pumpkins, I hope you planted some, but for you. Now, I know you're going to grow taller this summer, but I hope that you'll grow as a Christian too. And one of the ways that you can grow as a Christian is to read the Bible. And so I'm working on a plan right now that when we're together again next Wednesday night, I hope I'll have that plan ready and I can share with you how maybe you and your family can get together on Wednesday nights during the summer, and you can read about the many adventures of Paul. And some of them are pretty scary too. He didn't have an easy life, but a lot of good things happen, and I hope that you'll be able to discover those things. And in the meantime, don't forget, boys and girls, to let your lights shine.